Chapter 1: My Spiritual Awakening. I was born into a world of faith, a world that was deeply rooted in the teachings of Islam. My family was a melting pot for the three major sects of Islam. My father was born as a Shia and Sunni Muslim, and my mother was from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, a new reformation of Islam. When they got married in 1975, my dad converted to Ahmadiyyat and was a practicing Muslim. My paternal grandfather was a Sunni Muslim, and my grandmother from a Shia Muslim family with the prestigious Said family name. This diverse religious background set the stage for my spiritual journey, a journey that would take me from the confines of Islam into the expansive realm of spirituality and unconditional love. The stage of my life was set from transformation and spiritual awakening. I found myself at the lowest point in my life, filled with anger towards God, my family, friends, and the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. My business was on the brink of collapse, and my second ex-wife was making it difficult for me to see our two daughters. Every mistake I made was used against me in court, and it felt like the woman I once loved was now doing everything to keep me away from our children. Lots of questions come into one's mind, and for me, I questioned God, Allah. My personal life was no better. I was in the middle of my third failed marriage. After a heated argument, my third wife ended up in the detention center for one night, and the next day she was bailed and released. She accused me of abuse, but the truth was that she was the one abusing me. The detective saw through her lies and took her to detention instead of me. Think about that. I went home to get my things, and the cops had to be there as we had an argument the night before. She accused me of physical abuse, and she ended up at the detention center. This was 4 years ago. To keep up with my bills, I started driving for Uber. One night, after a particular frustrating encounter with a customer, I found myself driving home in the rain, tears streaming down my face. I was having a nervous breakdown. In my despair, I yelled at God, challenged him to prove his existence. That night, I called my sister and mother. I was either yelling or crying, and my sister advised me to stop driving and come to my mother's house. There, we had a discussion about our family and past issues that ended in another explosive argument. I was furious, and I felt a rage within me that I had never experienced before. In the following 2 weeks, something extraordinary happened. I experienced a Kundalini awakening, and I had my first encounter with a being who I believe could have been Gabriel, Enoch, or Thoth. This entity could read my mind and stop time, travel through time, and answer all my questions. I was instructed to remember our conversations, so I wrote down as much as I could. This marked the beginning of my spiritual awakening. I understand this is hard to believe and even comprehend. This is why it's taken me 4 years to understand and start writing about it. If I'm going through this, then others might also be in a similar position. When we ask to meet God, will God show up in the physical world? During the 2 weeks of my spiritual awakening, I experienced incredible changes. My body and energy felt different. The guilt I had carried for years, especially about behaviors like drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, and visiting strip clubs, has disappeared. I will talk about this in more detail later. Let me go over a few incidents that happened to me and the time I was so confused. I remember dropping off my dog for grooming, and I was at the facility to get Tracer. A misunderstanding led to a $150 charge, which triggered my anger. My children, who were in the car but not involved in the situation, were crying. When I got in the car and they were all crying, I asked them, why? They all could not tell me why, but all three were bawling in tears and they were in the car the whole time. Only I went into the facility. I realized later that they were reacting to my energy and my emotions in the facility, even though they were in the car. Another strange occurrence was when a spiritual person gave me some crystals and warned me not to let them get wet. When they got wet, I noticed flooding around me. This made me realize that my energy was affecting the physical world around me. I even demonstrated this to my son by wetting the crystals and predicting a change in the weather. When it started raining, 15 minutes later, he was amazed. This incident confirmed to me that my experience was real and not just in my head. In my reality, for those 2 weeks, things were happening that I still cannot explain. Noticeable change was in my diet. I started eating less meat and more vegetables and soupy foods. This led to a natural weight loss without much exercise. Emotionally, I became calmer over time. I noticed a decrease in my anger and violent tendencies. I learned to pause, breathe, and pay attention to what I was saying. My focus shifted from being self-centered to being more considerate of others. I started thinking about how I could help my family, friends, and even strangers. However, I also learned the importance of taking care of myself in the process. It took me 4 years to understand love, feelings, and the compass inside me. I learned to stay in the present moment and to consider other perspectives, not just my own. This was a significant shift from my previous belief that God was in charge of everything. Now I believe in feeling and understanding my emotions and staying present. Let me go over a few more people and situations I encountered during my spiritual awakening. Joel Osteen was my first break from Islam, and my sister introduced me to one of his books. I can't remember the name at the moment, but it was a 5-part CD. Despite my initial resistance to the Christian elements, I found his message inspiring and it stuck with me. I remember listening to it over and over, and that was a start of me taking a break from Islam and looking into Christianity. Abraham Esther Hicks was the next spiritual person I fell in love with. Her teachings had a profound impact on me. It took me a year to understand her concept of channeling, but once I did, I was completely drawn to it. Even now, I love learning about channeling and meditation. I remember her saying in one of her videos that she used to meditate for hours at a time. And after 9 months of intense work, she was able to channel and connect with Abraham, an entity. I am just 4 years into learning about meditation, but I love it. I can breathe and bring my mood up or down. Next, I got introduced to the Self-Realization Center in San Diego. Steve Jobs' recommendation led me to read the autobiography of a yogi by Yogananda. This book opened my eyes to the abilities of yogis and had a significant impact on my spiritual journey. Encounters with spiritual beings, I believe. I had several encounters with spiritual beings during my Uber rides. These experiences have made me realize that spiritual entities might be visiting us more often than we think. Now, please remember, this is all in my reality, which makes it so hard to communicate. How can all this be possible, and why am I learning it at the age of 40? These were a few big influences at the beginning of my spiritual journey. Each one of them played a significant role in shaping my understanding of spiritual and the universe. They helped me break free from the confines of my previous beliefs and opened my mind to new possibilities. Now, let's delve deeper into my experience with the spiritual being and the Kundalini awakening. The spiritual being I encountered was a fascinating entity. He appeared as a middle-aged, transgender Middle Eastern person with a feminine body and a masculine face. He was accompanied by a child who looked around the age 9 or 10 years old and appeared to be Sikh. This being had a cane which added to his intriguing persona. The Kundalini awakening was an experience like no other. It felt like every cell in my body was in a state of bliss for 2 weeks. I felt no stress, no worries, and I walked around the world with the curiosity of a child. I felt a disconnection from the real world, but in a good way. It was as if I was seeing everything through a new lens, experiencing life in its purest form. The changes I noticed in my body and energy were profound. If I drank alcohol, I wouldn't feel its effects or get drunk. It was as if my body had become immune to it. When I interacted with people, especially women, their reactions were different. Most of them would walk away, as if my energy was too intense for them. I could see fear in people's eyes when they talked to me, even though I was just being myself. It was a strange experience, but it made me realize the power of energy and how it can influence our intentions. My anger, a despair led me to challenge God. I was working tirelessly, trying to please everyone around me, but it seemed like no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make everyone happy. I felt like my suffering was increasing and more hardships were coming my way. I was a good person, trying to do good, but it felt like the universe was against me. This frustration led me to question God and challenge his existence. As for key people in my life, I have 2 stepbrothers from my dad's previous marriage, a sister, and 3 children of my own. The spiritual person who gave me the crystal was an Uber or Lyft passenger. They claimed they had been trying to communicate with me for weeks. I had never met this person before, but they claimed to be the angel Gabriel, or my higher self in physical form. Every time I meet them, they look different, but through our communication, I can tell that they are the same entity. It's a strange experience, but it's a part of my spiritual journey. In conclusion, my spiritual awakening has been a journey of self-discovery, transformation, and growth. It has taught me to question everything, to seek truth, and to embrace love and compassion. It has shown me that we are all connected and that our energy can influence the world around us. It has been a challenging journey, but it's a journey I wouldn't trade for anything. My name is Ahmed Mustafa Ahad, and this is Chapter 1, Draft 1 of my new book, Love for All, The Awakening. I zoomed out for this one. I don't know if that's a good idea or bad idea, but let's see what happens. Because I'm not going to check it again. Huh, birds. Okay, here we go. We're at Let Me Go Over. I remember dropping. It's a good time to stop right now when you make these many mistakes. Let me go over a few instants. I think it's time to take a break. When you make that many mistakes, break time. Joel Osteen was my first break from Islam. Hold on. I need a break. Shit, I don't remember. I was zoomed in, then out. Oh, I need to be all the way in on this one. Oh, well, I remember. Okay.